I got the first layer on a port side ceiling of the planking, I guess, and got it attached. So you can see how I use these little square pieces and with plastic, and then I used my pneumatic nailer, and then I also have a few pieces like this just to help push it up there. And I did use those roughly 1/4 inch spacers at the bottom, and I made sure that these pieces were down, essentially touching those. And so now that I've got this first one in, that was the hardest one to kind of get going. And so I'll be continuing on. So I made a bunch more of these little square pieces because as I do the ceilings on both sides, I'll probably use all these or a lot of them. I also need them for the decking down the road, so any that I don't use now, I'll use later. And then I made these little pieces. There's my pneumatic nail gun. And the intent is, what I'll do is I'll put this on the top edge of that planking piece that I just put in there as a spacer, and so it'll set basically kind of like this, and then I'll put the next one on top, and that way I know I've got basically it'll be parallel with each subsequent piece. So I'll see how that works. And I made them like this, that way you can kind of slip in, and then this will help it sort of stay. So we'll see how that works. So I've got the first 3 planks done on the port side now. I just peeled off these washers and the plastic and stuff, so it's looking good. Obviously I'll need to do some sanding to clean them up, but that will be no problem at all. And what's nice about this is like when I did the top sides, I did a lot of fairing to make sure that it was, from one board to the next, very smooth, and spent a lot of time on that. And you can watch, I've got a video or two earlier on about that. What's nice about this is you don't plank to plank, you're not going to have to be so precise. Now I'm going to want these to be nice and smooth, but I don't have to worry about plank to plank, if there's a little dip or valley and things like that in between those, because these will be filled with, my plan is to use the 3M 4200 UV caulk basically, so that's nice. So 3 are in there, and so I'll be continuing on. It's going to take 6 plus maybe a little bit, 6 plus a partial one. I'm not exactly sure. Once I get there, I'll find out. But so yeah, and then this ceiling is should hopefully hold its shape a little better with a curve. And I considered actually pulling it out and doing the rest of the planks just on a table, but I don't know, we'll see. Because I think it would still, kind of hold its shape some, but it'll still flex and stuff. So that's what we got so far. I've got the first 6 planks done on the port side now. And what I've been doing is kind of refining how it fits up in there, and it had to clean off some epoxy that had dripped on the bottom, and so it's fitting in there nicely now. But I've got one little part of a strip right up in that area that I right up in there that I plan on putting a sliver up in there. And but other than that, It's coming together really nicely now. Obviously, I need to clean up the surface, which I will do. But as far as like doing the bleaching and then staining, I think I'm gonna wait on all of that and then putting the caulk. Right now, I'm planning on caulking in between these. I think I mentioned that before. Just like I plan on doing the decking. The downside to that is a little more maintenance because the caulk apparently will need to be cleaned every so often. But I'm not sure if I don't do that, if I put some kind of a lighter color wood in there. I know others have done that. The problem with that is what I would want to do is glue that in after this is all stained and even, well, after staining. Varnishing could happen after, but the problem is if I stain this before I put the strips in, then obviously when I glue the strips in, I could get epoxy up on the wood. So if I stained all of this after I glued those in, well, I want those to stay light color, so now what do? I have to take them off somehow. So it creates a logistics issue, whereas caulking doesn't, because when you caulk, what I will do is stain and do all the varnish, and then I will just caulk. I'm not planning on varnishing over the caulking for the deck or this. So then I don't have to worry about it. So about like taping or getting epoxy on and stuff like that. But that's where I am. And again, I plan on this whole piece is removable. I epoxied the first 5 planks with this in place. And then the 6th one at the top, I actually pulled the whole thing out and did it with it out. So that little strip that I'm gonna do, I probably will do the same. I'll just pull it out and do it that way. So that's where I am so far. So here's that last little strip that I was talking about. Got it epoxied on, and since it was near an edge, I was able to just use clamps instead of my composite nailer thing. So that will finish this off. And probably what I will do is do some cleanup of this surface a little bit. But I may hold off on that, who knows. Because I'll probably get little nicks and dings, which I'll try to avoid. But so yeah, that's the last piece of planking then for this port side ceiling. So here's the port side ceiling. I just cleaned it up. I had a little bit of epoxy in a few of those slots, in a few spots, not a lot, but try to clean that up. And then I used my linear sander and just with 60 grit, just to clean it up, clean the epoxy off and knock off the composite nail nubs. I cut them, but they were still sticking up. So that way it's just cleaned up pretty good. And then, like I mentioned, later on, I will I'll bleach this and stain and everything, just like I did the top sides, and then seal it like I did with CPS here. And then, of course, I haven't varnished these yet, but do the same technique. You know, seal this after varnishing, and then, or seal this after staining, and then do the varnishing. But again, I'm gonna wait until I do the decking as my plan anyway, or at least that's my plan. We'll see. So here's a quick look of what it looks like in the boat all cleaned up. I've got a couple of minor things. I need to seal up or re-encapsulate the back. Actually the composite nails poke through, which I knew they were gonna do, but poke through that 6mm backer board. And so I scraped those off, but I need to reseal that, and I had some strips and things that are on the back. So I sanded those, so I will seal that up. And I need to encapsulate around the edges of this whole board too, where I've made some additional cuts and tweaks and things. So I'll and even encapsulate the edges of all of these planks, and then I'll have to sand again, clean that up before I do the bleaching and staining and all that. But that'll come down the road. I got the first piece of the starboard ceiling of the pretty planking, just like here's the port. That's what I'm going for over here. So I'm just starting here, and so the bottom piece is actually two parts. I can show a little easier on this side. There's this bottom one, and then just because of the gussets there, this piece right here on the bottom, they're just two separate pieces. And to get them in line, I mean, they don't need to be perfect. In fact, my buddy's seat is going to be here kind of covering that up. But I got kind of lucky on this side. I think I put spacers down on the flooring, so the boards, that first board would be up off the floor in kind of a roughly level with what the flooring will be. Well, on this side, my flooring frames, which are kind of covered up by that plastic, they're not perfect, surprise, but that board up there, it was too low. I attached this one fine, then I attached this, and I did check the angle of, as I was doing that, I want it to be 5 degrees kind of up like that towards the front, just like this side ended up being, and which is roughly essentially parallel with the stringers or close to it, or at least the two ceilings will be the same. But when I attached that small piece, I had a spacer down there, and I thought I had it figured out. When I attach it, I'll go over there just a second. All right, so here's that small piece, and the top edge I wanted to be roughly the same as this back piece. And when I first attached it, it was too low. The angle was right, 5 degrees, but it was just too low. So it was interesting because I had it all attached like this, and I peeled all these off. I was able to pry off the piece without too much trouble, and I had to clip off the little composite nails that were sticking out. There were a few little nubs and things, and redid it. So it gave me an extra level of excitement, which I could have done without. But that is why actually I use, well, not because of this, but for things like this, that's why I use the slow cure epoxy, because it gives me time actually to apply I kind of when I make these, I encapsulate. I'm gonna do a sort of a layer of encapsulation, then I mix up thickened epoxy with the rest that's left, and then I apply the thickened epoxies to both surfaces. I do the mating surface on the boat and then the back side of the board, and that's what I did with the planking, like I mentioned before, on the top sides. So it just gives me a lot of time, because it's like a 45-minute cure time roughly, depending on temperature. And so that way it gives me time to do all that and then get everything attached. And even with that, I will say you still have to work against the clock, because it's still, get these attached like this, you're still working against the clock. I now have 3 pieces attached on the starboard ceiling, so I'm getting there. The first row is the hardest, and the second one is the next hardest, because I got cut a little notch out of there, and up front got a notch around the frame up there. And but now these go a little faster. So the starboard ceiling, I've got it done to the same point that I have that the port side here is done. I cleaned it up. All the planks are epoxied on, and I did a rough fairing with my linear sander, and also kind of cleaned up the edges and things. So I still need to encapsulate the back and the side edges of this piece like I need to do on the port side, but here's what it looks like. It's just sitting in there for now. Now I got to figure out how to attach these. And I also want to figure out some kind of a storage some sort of a little hole, like an oval shaped hole is what I'm thinking, and I might put like here or something just to be able to store, or like up in here somewhere on each side. So you can just store a little place to put something in the boat, little cubby hole. But that's what it looks like.